If you feel like you're always translating when you speak, yeah, that's normal. Like, really, everyone goes through that. And honestly, let me be clear, translation itself is not a bad thing. I'm actually very pro translation. But the way most people use it, that's where things start to go a little wrong. What a lot of learners do is pretty simple. They take a sentence, they translate word by word, and they try to rebuild it. And to be fair, it makes sense because that's exactly how most tools are designed. You type something into Google Translate, you get an answer, and you move on. Quick, easy, done. But here's the catch. These tools are built for speed, not for understanding. You can't really add context. You can ask why something works. You can explore different options. So yeah, you get a result, but you don't actually understand it. And sometimes that leads to situations that are a bit awkward. Let me give you a quick juicy story. It's a good one. At some point before ChatGPT existed, I wanted to say something super simple. Language partner. Very neutral, very innocent. So I used the translation app. And what it gave me, let's just say, not innocent anymore. It turned into something way more intimate than I intended. Yeah, not great. And that's exactly the problem. The tool gave me a translation, but not the right one for that situation. And sometimes is the opposite. Instead of one answer, you get five. And now you're stuck like, okay, cool, but which one do I pick? Which one sounds natural? Which one is formal? Which one do people actually use? So either you trust one random answer and risk being wrong, or you hesitate and lose time. And all of this comes from the same issue, no context. And without context, translation becomes guesswork. And there's another layer to this, and this one is big, especially if you're learning like Korean, because in Korean, it's not just about grammar. It's about social context. It's about politeness levels, and most translation tools don't give you that. They don't tell you if something is formal, informal, neutral. They just give you a sentence. So you might be grammatically correct, but socially completely off. Too formal, not formal enough. Constant mismatch. You're not just making language mistakes anymore, you're making social mistakes. But yeah, languages don't work like that, not even close. A language is not just a list of words, it's a system. There's a structure, a logic, a way of organizing ideas. So if you take your language and try to copy paste it into another one, it's going to sound off. Sometimes wrong, sometimes technically correct, but still not natural. And that part is huge. Because you can be grammatically correct and still sound completely unnatural. And if you repeat that again and again, you start memorizing patterns that don't belong to the language. And those are the hardest ones to fix later, believe me. You see this even more with languages that are very different. French and Korean, for example, totally different logic. So word for word translation there, it just doesn't work. But even with languages that feel close, like French and English, you still get a lot of mistakes because it feels familiar. So you trust it. And that's exactly where the trap is. And then on top of that, you have apps like Duolingo. And again, the idea is not bad, but the way the information is presented can be really confusing. Sometimes you get an infinitive, sometimes a conjugated form, sometimes a noun, sometimes a verb, no real consistency. So you end up learning equivalence without really understanding how things actually work. So what do we do? So yeah, that's the problem. Now, what do we do about it? First, stop translating words. Start translating meaning. When you translate something, don't just take the answer and move on. Pause for a second. Ask yourself, does this actually sound natural? Would a native say it like that? And if you're not sure, that's perfect. That's exactly where learning happens. Now, this is where things get interesting because ChatGPT completely changes the game. Not because it translates better, but because you can interact with it. You can give context. You can say, this is an informal conversation, this is for Instagram, this is a professional email, this is something administrative or medical. You can ask about tone, politeness, what sounds natural. And suddenly, You're not guessing anymore. You're making informed choices. Second, make it easy. If it's not easy, you won't do it. So create a shortcut on your phone to a conversation dedicated to translation. You set it up once and then it's just there, fast, accessible, ready to use. And instead of getting random answers, you start building something consistent over time. You can generate sentences, explore different uses of a word, or turn everything into flashcards. And that brings me to something really important. Stop learning words on their own. It feels productive, but the return is actually pretty low. What you need is context. What you need is structure. So instead of learning a word, learn a short sentence, because that sentence becomes a pattern and later you reuse that structure and adapt it. That's how fluency starts to happen. So yeah, translation is not the problem. You just need to use it properly. Don't stop translating, just translate better. And by the way, when it comes to learning vocabulary, having a good flashcard app is absolutely key. I'm working on a full 2026 review of the best apps. For that, you can view the 2025 on my channel, 2025 review, if you haven't. And in the next video, I'll show you step by step how to set this up on iPhone, how to create shortcuts, keep one dedicated conversation, store your vocabulary, generate tables, and build text from it. I don't use Android, so I can't show that part, but for iPhone, I've got you. So stay tuned. That's coming next. My name is Lauren. I'm a linguist and a French teacher. If you want to study with me, links in bio.